Hello everyone, and welcome back to another instalment of our long-running webinar series. Since we started our webinars in 2017, hundreds of experts have shared their knowledge on many different sustainability topics. Hearing from our experts and experienced guest speakers is a great way to build your sustainability knowledge and help your business succeed sustainably. Where do you start to create a sustainability strategy for your industry? It's great to hear from someone who has experienced this challenge. In this webinar, Cathy Inglis and Nicole Sullivan explain how they brought manufacturers in Australia's clay and concrete industries together to develop the industry's strategy. Let's get into it.
And let's launch in. So before I introduce our speaker, Cathy, I want to talk to you about engaging your industry to develop a sustainability strategy and roadmap. Now, when we look at what a sustainability strategy and roadmap should cover, it should cover all aspects of sustainability. So the three pillars of social, environmental, and economic sustainability in that wrapper of governance, which pulls it all together and makes sure that things actually happen. Now, where is your industry or company perhaps up to with sustainability? If you're just getting started, you might find that leading companies are taking some action. That action may have a narrow focus on carbon emissions potentially, and you might find that across your industry, sustainability isn't a real focus for most. However, if you're building momentum, we might see your industry starting to band together to understand common ground and build collective action. And then finally, if your industry is really leading the way, we would see that your industry has a strategic plan, a roadmap for action, targets set, and they're collaborating to get everyone there together. Now, how do we get industries moving? It is the big challenge. We do see leaders stepping up, but we also observe that the majority are lagging behind at the moment. And in particular, we see that small to medium enterprises or SMEs are struggling. They're working in challenging markets, often with slim margins. They're thin on resources, both from a personnel as well as a financial capacity. And if they're pursuing certifications like you need for Green Star, that can be quite difficult and costly to do so. And what we're starting to observe is the gap is really widening in terms of where the leaders are progressing to and where we need the rest of industry to catch up. But I want to suggest there is an answer in associations and cooperatives. So they're very powerful in that they're insightful. Associations understand what their members need, what they don't need, and what works for them. They're enablers of action because many members are often SMEs, and because they can create collective action and exploit economies of scale, we can see action happening where individual companies struggle. I love that associations are pragmatic. They can create tools that are bespoke, that are specifically designed for their industry to make sure that they can lever forward the best way with the minimum of fuss. Associations are also influencers. Associations have the opportunity to really drive their industry forward in many aspects, and sustainability is certainly a strong one today. And associations are multipliers. The impact and the effort that they are investing can apply to many, many businesses, and therefore it can multiply the benefits of the positive impact of that effort. Now, if you want to work as an industry to really push forward in sustainability, where do you start? Well, we start by establishing common ground. It's really important that everyone has the same understanding of what you're trying to tackle and the same basic knowledge of what needs to be built upon. You need to invest in understanding where industry is at today, what has already happened, and who has moved forward, and what needs to happen to bring others forward in the same way. Out of that process, it's then an opportunity to define what is possible, to see where the leaders are heading, where all of industry can travel, but also what your external stakeholders are asking for. How far do your customers and investors or regulators need you to move, and how can you move there together as an industry? Importantly, that all needs to come together in terms of a real plan to develop a strategy and a roadmap, and then to communicate it. And finally, a plan is nothing if we don't act on it. And so then it's about making sure that collective and collaborative action happens to move forward. Now, a great example of that is going to be brought to you by Cathy Inglis. Cathy is the CEO of Think Brick Australia, as well as the Concrete Masonry Association of Australia and the Australian Roof Tile Association. So, Cathy, thanks very much for joining us today. I'd like to invite you to explain to everyone the work that you've been doing.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I thought I'd just, following on from what Nicole said, take you through with the journey we went through at Think Brick, Concrete Masonry Association and the Roof Tile Association on how we tackled our sustainability strategy. I think first step was actually that we needed to commit to do something. That was one of Nicole's first things she talked about. I'm not sure all our members were quite convinced that this was a good thing to do, but we looked at it as though there's a couple of the larger members that were doing lots of good things. The smaller members, we didn't even know what they needed to do. So we took them on a bit of a journey. And what we started with is our association was looking at our strategy and what we do for our members. And part of that, a significant pillar in that is our sustainability, that we have a consistent message across all our products, highlighting the benefits of them. And we have that consistent message spread across how the products perform, how they're made, and how they perform in the field. So we engaged with ThinkStep and started off the process after several meetings going back and forwards with the team here in the office at Think Brick. We started off with some workshop sessions. So we got all our members together. We started with the first workshop was actually all the companies combined. So that's the brick industry, the concrete masonry industry, and the roof tile industry all combined. Because the start of this was very similar process. The very initial part of it, though, you can see our little first agenda there for the day we did the workshops and some of the pictures of the team. We had a lot of people in the room. We also had people joining online that were located in remote locations around Australia to join us. But one of the first thing was to educate the members. There's many of them that weren't familiar with what an LCA, an EPD, what's embodied carbon, what's greenwashing, where we fit. So a lot of that work was done to educate the members first, and then we finally worked through brainstorming and looking at our priority areas, what to from here, and that was session number 1. Following that, we moved to session number 2, which revolved around, we had a separate clay brick one and concrete masonry. So we had clay products together, so clay bricks and clay roof tiles. Then we had concrete masonry and concrete roof tiles together. We did a lot of brainstorming using Post-it notes on whiteboards. We weren't just focusing on carbon. We were looking at that whole process around environmental, social, and governance, and where this meant and what it meant for the industry. And the Post-it notes then we worked on Miro boards. And so dragging all the comments from all our members and all our participants into groups. This was quite a lengthy process because there were many things that were suggested, many ideas came up, many questions as well at the same time. But essentially looking at where are we going as an industry, what do we need to focus on, and what do we need to include if we publish a document that's our industry's sustainability strategy. So at the end of probably 8, 9, 10 months, we came up with our published strategies, one for clay building products and one for concrete building products. If anyone's interested, they are on our website, so you can download them. So these documents summarise the outcomes of our reports and what we did in our workshops. So it summarises the processes of manufacturing. And as in the industry, we all know how bricks, blocks and roof tiles are made, but we found our industry stakeholders, so whether it be architects, builders, consumers, aren't as familiar with the process and don't know and don't understand how products are made. And this looks at the areas which have the most impact on carbon, or the most impact on which environmental part of the process has the most impact. It does a snapshot of all our members and provides this. And as I mentioned before, we're spread from couple of very big members to some very small individual businesses that haven't even started their journey on reducing carbon and improving their environmental footprint. This is our process for concrete manufacturing, concrete product manufacturing. Again, flowing through the process from the building life cycle, and then focusing on manufacturing and where the impact is. And obviously with concrete products, we've got the impact of the cement manufacturer as part of it. Again, looking at our members spread around Australia, the diverse membership we have, and where they're located. And again, many small members. So once we looked at that and how products are made, we then sort of realised that how this fits into the circular economy and our product manufacture. So looking at the process from resources, through manufacturing, through the use of the product and its life over the building cycle, and finally the end of use. So this is how our manufacture process for the circular economy, to use less natural resources, to minimise the waste and maximise recycling. And I think through this process, and I'm going to show you some examples of the things we found, it was interesting that what the members were doing, and the little members, even though they didn't think they were doing something, were actually doing it once we sort of talked it through, and they realised what they were doing was actually contributing to an improved environmental footprint. So looking at our resources in the industry, when we talk about clay products, clay is one of the most abundant materials on the earth. They're locally sourced raw materials, so we're close to the clay pits that we mine from. We're not hauling materials long distances. But the other thing we found out was that most of our members use other people's waste materials as a resource, so coal washings, timber, sawdust, etc., and crushed building products can go into the products and be used as a raw material. So this is incorporated in the manufacturing process, where we use waste from other industries. All the process waste that's generated through manufacturing is actually incorporated back into the products. We collected water is used in most manufacturing sites, through the production and manufacturing, only collected water is used, and town water is only used in offices. We had some manufacturers moving to electric machinery, solar on roofs, the modern machinery that uses variable speed drives, so they don't use constant power. They save the energy and only use power when you're actually pushing machinery. The heat in the kilns, at the cooling in the kilns, is recycled back to provide the energy for the dryers. A lot of natural curing happens for concrete products in the yard. So these were the things we found out. I think if we hadn't worked through the process with all the members, we wouldn't know all this information about what's going on. And finally, through the use stage, we looked at, and this is important because obviously there's an operational contribution of carbon to a building, but also the carbon that's used to maintain that building, which is part of your building use embodied carbon. So if we're building buildings that are designed for longevity, we have energy efficient buildings with good solar passive design, designed for resilience and low maintenance, you can actually have your products, they come to the fore in that sort of area, looking at the use stage. And this was a highlight of the products that we represent through our members. And finally, looking at reuse and recycling, so upcycling essentially for reuse. So when a building is knocked down, can the products be reused with their properties intact? And we know that bricks and blocks, once they come down, they can be reused. There are many brick recycling yards around that are available that collect the bricks, clean the mortar off, and get reused in applications. Or if they're not, they can be removed as waste and crushed and go back into road-based landscaping or back into brick manufacturing. So looking at the end of it, so this whole circular economy, and this was a really important part of our process, going through not only how we make the products, but how they're used and what the applications are in the field. So we developed our roadmap and how we move towards a lower emissions future. And this was looking at all the things that's going on in our manufacturing operations, looking at alternate fuels that are used for firing, biofuels, hydrogen research, solar power for operations. For those that don't know, you can't make bricks with electricity. It's not enough energy. Most manufacturing plants run on natural gas, but now we've got many that are looking towards biofuels to reduce the carbon footprint. Using more manufacturing processes, sourcing recovered and recycled materials, but also doing innovation and research and development. And what we identified was that to really reduce our emissions, we needed to focus on more research and development across the industry. And we also needed commitment from the government and all stakeholders throughout the value chain to be able to do this. We looked at the research that's going on as an industry. We've got thermal research looking at the behaviour of products and how they perform once they're in application. So that reduces the impact of products in the use stage of a building. We got research with mortarless masonry and permeable pavement research. Again, that's about the impact in application of the products. So not only look at what we can do in manufacturing to reduce the impact, but also through the use stage of the products. And finally, in this process, we developed our roadmap to 2050. And so 2024, when we published this, I think it's only 2 months now, we set our baseline. What we're going to do is review it at the end of this year and work to next year to actually publish some industry targets. Some of our members already have individual targets, but what we want to do is publish an industry target as a totality, that what we can do to improve. And then through 2025 to 2030, how we're going to improve that further, different use of energy, different use of materials, review and update it again in 2030, and finally get working towards net zero 2050. This is obviously a very ambitious timeline that we set, but we had to have this sort of process and set these steps so that we can actually measure and act on what we're doing, and that's a very important part of it. So looking at measuring emissions and doing consistently. And as an association, we hope to be able to help our smaller members that actually don't know how to even make a start with scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. What does it mean? What do they need to measure? What data do they need to collect? But how can we make it industry consistent? So as an association, we can help them through that process. And there's many barriers to that particularly our smaller members need, as well as some of our bigger ones as well. But we can do that as an industry. And then supporting environmental product declarations, where our members can report on the gains that they've made and the benefits and the reduced impacts. So that provides an opportunity to work on that. There's also barriers towards generating that many EPDs with the ability of the cost of them, etc., and to be able to collect the data. So as an industry, we look to be able to work towards this pathway, but also help bring our members in the associations along with us. And that's the end. So that basically summarises the process that we went through to be able to develop our industry strategies. And with the help of ThinkStep, we were able to do that in a very structured way and be able to help us through it. We couldn't have done it without using ThinkStep to do this, because it was a bit daunting to start with, but as we worked through it, we actually it was a great process. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Cathy. And yeah, a big shout out to my colleague Tori Wooters, who actually did most of the work for this. I was along for the ride, but yeah, Tori did a lot of the work with the associations to help to pull this together. And our amazing creative team, particularly, who pulled together those beautiful strategy and roadmap documents. I have a bunch of questions, but we also have questions coming in the Q&A functions. Dan, you've actually asked the first question that I was going to ask anyway. This has been great, Cathy. Thank you. How has this roadmap been received in the market from your members, customers, suppliers, etc.?
So we first launched it to all our members. So we have a roadshow. We go around to all our members, and all their sales teams come in, and all the staff. And we launched it to them to start with. And I think some of them were probably a bit daunted by it. Didn't really know why we'd done it. But I think once we worked through and explained that this is what we've now got as an industry document to go out and present our case when we're talking to regulators, government, bureaucrats, when they're talking about what we all know we've got to build 1.2 million homes. What are we going to build them out of? How do products fit into that? With the sustainability strategy, we have a starting point of where we are now. It encompasses what the members have done and then where we're going to keep improving and moving forward. We also had a couple of industry events around the country. We've still got some more to do, but we did one Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth, and had a general industry event with architects and builders, even some bricklayers turned up, researchers in the industry, and launched it. And everyone that we've given it to so far has been very positive about it, that we've done something. I actually haven't had any negative comments. I was sort of wondering whether we would, but so far to date, everyone's been positive and really appreciative, and that we've done something and got a starting point.
So, Cathy, that's interesting, because I think, as sustainability people, we really want to be able to push industry forward, but industry is all sorts of different places along there. And I'm guessing that if you could have designed your ideal sustainability strategy, it might have been even more than this is. But how is that then received by your members in terms of, like, is everyone bought into this with where you've got it now?
Not quite everyone's bought in on it yet, but as I'm going around and as I'm talking to them, I'm pointing out that this is the first bit. They've all now got to step up as manufacturers and keep doing stuff so we can continue to update the document, so we can continue to demonstrate what the industry is doing. So I'm actually putting it on them all to say, step up. And it gives us that base to be able to do that, because we can sit there and go, this is accepted. This is what's getting the industry wants. Mm-hmm. So that if we want our products represented going forward in the building industry, we need to be able to demonstrate their benefit, their environmental footprint, the impacts we have on the environment. And again, I touch on the bit, it's not just the carbon, it's the environment, but also social and governance. The local manufacturing, close to lots of local sources around, close to local communities. Good governance. They're made in Australia. We have good governance around health and safety laws in Australia, modern slavery. All these sort of things actually contribute to the value of a product, and it's represented in these documents. So I think there's probably be a few members I'll have to drag along a bit and maybe kicking and screaming, but that's part of the process to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't let perfection get in the way of progress. So no. I think, and I really think that you guys work quite hard to try and strike that right balance, to be able to bring as many on board as you can. And it was a really good process of engagement with your members. James has said, thanks for this discussion. Which other associations in Australia and New Zealand have used a similar approach? Are you aware of any, Cathy? I can think of a couple.
I think cement and concrete industry have done one. I'm not quite sure who they use to do it off the top of my head, but they have a roadmap to decarbonisation. And I think it's called the 2030 roadmap to decarbonisation, if I've got that right. Might be 2050. That's the only other one I know of.
Yeah, so my memory says VDZ, but you might need a fact checker on that one. Yeah. I think it was a European company that did it on the back of an international decarbonisation roadmap that had been done.
Yeah. There's a couple of international ones are out there that if you search for those roadmaps industry-wide that have been done in Europe. I know there's a ceramic one, and there's a couple of other international ones that have been identified, but yeah, to date, I think there's only the two in Australia. 3 now, because we got 2.
Yeah, that's right. You got 2 of them in one go, so you did well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other one that I would mention, although it's different, is the Australian Steel Institute developed a certification program for their members called Steel Sustainability Australia. So their strategy is actually in a certification system where they're helping their members to get certified to meet the GBCA's responsible products requirements. And so they're illustrating what matters to their industry by the requirements that they put in their certification system, but it's not a strategy in the same way as this. Jacqueline's asking, does impending government legislation help with industry uptake of such roadmaps?
I'd say yes, because that gives the impetus to do something and to get it going. I think that was my biggest. When I suggested we should do something, I think the industry had sort of started talking about it a few years ago. Should we do something? Shouldn't we? And then it was like, we need to do something to be able to respond, particularly to government and regulations that are coming. And if you haven't got a strategy or you haven't got some sort of plan, it's very hard to have an industry response. And most of the time, the governments are looking towards industry associations rather than individual manufacturers for a response. So I think my answer to that would be it really helps. And like I've said, we've only just finished it. It's a couple of months. And I've used it numerous times to talk to different people, different industry stakeholders, and it's really getting a positive response.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. Now, I'm very aware of the time and I want to respect everybody's calendars that no doubt are stuffed full. So I'm just going to ask you one last question, which Tim has put up, and I think it's a fantastic last question. How important is it to involve suppliers and customers of your industry in the development of the strategy?
So we didn't involve customers. We did involve suppliers because we have suppliers as members as well. So we involved them, and that's part of the supply chain that goes into the manufacturing. So that part was important. I think going forward, I think we had a discussion about this partway through about customers and think that could nearly be our next step. We did focus on what we published in the documents would be useful for our customers and stakeholders, but they haven't been brought into the process at this point. But that's probably a really good second stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we did revisit quite often is talking to people about what are your customers asking for. But yeah, I think, maybe the ideal process would actually be a materiality assessment alongside it. So you're really getting a lot of external stakeholder voice.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to put is that it's good to start somewhere to just, like you said, sometimes baby steps are better than no steps at all. So if you start with your manufacturing and supply chain, and then, in the future can work to that, because I think if we had and that was a big enough process doing those two in one go. If we had have added more into that, we mightn't have got there, or it would have taken a lot longer, and we probably could have hit some more hurdles.
Yeah, that's a great message. Yeah, again, don't let perfection get in the way of progress, but get started and do something. And I think you've got an amazing result and a lot of buy-in from a lot of members who are part of that process. So with that, we will pull the webinar to a close. Thank you so much, Cathy. That was fascinating and really good to hear your insights on how it's resonating with industry and helping you to keep moving forward. And thank you to everyone who's been joining us. If you'd like to see more webinars from thinkstep-anz, please visit our website, and we look forward to seeing you at another one really soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
We have many more webinars on our website on a whole host of sustainability topics.